All right, folks, welcome back to the channel and to another episode of Fresh Finds. It's been a little while since we've done one of these. I think the last one I did was actually a live stream, and I thought about doing that tonight, but I wanted to show you some close-ups of some of the items that I picked up over the last 2-3 weeks, and figured a video would be the best way to do that. So this video is coming on the heels of a 2-week road trip to the Midwest. It's my annual spring road trip. That kind of revolves around the timing of the Oddball event, which is one of my favorite events of the year, and it's actually how I kick my Hickory golf season off each year. And that's the Featherie Gutty event hosted by Denny and Cathy Lane of Hickory Lane Featherie near Peoria, Illinois. They had 29 folks show up to the event this year, which was really cool. It's the largest that event's ever been, and it's continuing to grow. It's attracted people from all over the country, myself included, but most notably, Kelly Leonard, replica longnose club maker from Manitoba, Canada, made the trip and brought with him, I'd say, at least 60 clubs. And Elmer Nahum was also there, the author of Practical Club Making. And the two of them, with all the clubs that they brought, I would say we were probably close to 75, 100 clubs, replica longnose clubs, set up on a driving range. And we were hitting Hickory Lane Featheries and some of the practice gutties that Elmer Nahum makes, which I showed you in a video about a month ago or so on the channel. And we set up on the driving range, and I would say it was probably the first 19th century club fitting in 125 years, if ever. It was just really cool to see that many long nose clubs, playable replicas. Basically all different lofts, all different weights, waiting for people to try out. A bunch of people from the event got there early so that they could hit those balls, and hit the Lane Featherie and hit the practice gutties that Elmer makes on the range. And then both Kelly and Elmer allowed people to kind of take clubs out on the course with them if they didn't have their own long nose clubs to play Featherie. And Denny Lane built one of the coolest 9-hole Featherie layouts that I've ever played. It's definitely the best that I've ever played. It was just really cool. Basically used the actual 9-hole layout at Hillcrest Golf Center on the back nine, but instead of using the real greens, he mowed some areas, kind of strategically around those greens, and it was just a really fun layout. We're going to do it again next year. There's even more, excitement about it after this year, and I know it's going to attract more people to it, and you should definitely keep it on your radar. I'll be letting you know about it, ahead of time so you can plan for it. But there's kind of a consensus among those of us that have played it a few years now that we would be totally content playing Featherie 2 days in a row, and maybe just playing a 9-hole gutty round at Hillcrest in between, or, basically those of us that are going, really enjoy what Denny does to make it a fun and accurate Featherie golf experience. So I think those of us there would like to play Featherie more than we even are already. So stay tuned for more details on that in the future. But the point that I want to make was the fact that we had Elmer and Kelly Leonard there, and also Brad Korando, who is directly working with me in his workshop as I learn how to make these 19th century replica longnose clubs. And it was just really cool from a club making experience or club making perspective to have all of those people in one spot, looking at all the clubs that they've been making, and talking about club making. There were some of us that have already started making their own clubs. I've started making an 1870s Tom Morris putter based on the template that Elmer provides in Practical Club Making, which you should certainly pick up if you haven't already, and I'll put the link to that in the description. But Joey Piatek, who is a fellow Society Hickory Golf board member and member of the Gutty Golf Committee with me, and also Andy Groh, Joey was there, and he has already made his first 3 clubs based on Featherie clubs, based on the templates that Elmer provides in Practical Club Making, and used those clubs in the Featherie round. And did great. Joey's a scratch golfer, and pretty much carries that over to whatever he plays, whether it be Featherie, Gutty, or whatever. So he really enjoyed playing with his own clubs and was worried they were going to break, but they looked great to me before we started playing, and they played great for him. Also stole the show with his top hat, and also the chair that he made, which doubles as a club carrier. So just really cool ingenuity and creativity, on hand, not just from the club makers, but from those that are inspired by Elmer and Kelly to start making their own clubs. Denny Olson, also another person who started making his own clubs. So it's just a really cool group of people that's inspired me to continue working on my clubs. I couldn't wait to get back in my shop after seeing everything that everyone was making. So that was definitely, the reason for the trip, or the timing of the trip, and certainly the highlight of the trip for me. One of the clubs that I ended up buying from Kelly, I'll show you right now. This is a 17-degree play club, and it's not based on any particular template. This was one of the first clubs that Kelly made, I think he said maybe 10 years ago. And it has all the characteristics of a long-nose club for feathery play, but it's not based on any particular template. This is made out of beech, which is pretty tough to find these days, so you don't really find too many feathery clubs, replica feathery clubs made out of beech anymore. But it's got really nice weight to it. I'm trying to think, I don't have the weight on it, but it's definitely in the upper D's, low E's. But the really interesting thing about this club for me was that it's got a really whippy shaft. And a lot of people are turned off by trying a whippy shaft. But when it comes to feathery golf, I think a whippy shaft is probably the way to go, at least for me. I have a slower swing, and I'll show you a couple shots with this as I'm talking. But the shots that I hit well with this, it was a nice, easy swing, and I let the club kind of, cliche, I let the club do the work. But I think the fact that it was a whippier shaft allowed me to kind of let that happen more so than the swings that I've put on feathery ball with the stiffer shafts that I've got in the clubs that Brad Korando made me. So it's one of those things that I never would have thought would work for me if I just waggled this club. But I waggled it before, we played the round, and Kelly said, take it out with you and see what you do, see what you think. And he actually was in my play group, so he could watch the swings that I was putting on the ball. And I'm kind of a convert to a whippier shaft. So I thought this was a cool pickup. The nice thing about not only the fact that you could try out all these clubs on the driving range before the round, but a lot of the folks that show up to this event are kind of repeat attendees. And, some of us have started making our own clubs, but a lot of us haven't yet. And the fact that we had almost 100 replica clubs just sitting around, Brad also brought a bunch of clubs. That meant that everyone could play with replica long-nose clubs during the round. I think, with 29 people, I don't know how many groups we had, but we had several, groupings that went out on the course, and everyone in, at least there was at least one person in every group that had a full, array of long-nose clubs for people to try. So that was kind of important for Brad and I as we talked about the planning for the event. Well, I didn't plan the event, but our intent was to try to bring enough clubs for everyone to play replicas so that they didn't have to play gutty clubs and, use their irons with the feathery ball, basically. And I'm pretty sure we accomplished that. I think every group had, like I said, a representative set so that everyone could play feathery golf with true period-accurate replica clubs. So it's a very cool event. And again, want to thank Denny and Cathy for putting it on every year. They put a lot of work into it, and it's just a really fun event, 2-day event. And again, keep it on your calendar. All right, so let's move on because I got other stuff I want to show you. Joey brought with him some heads, gutty heads, that he didn't want. And so we went out to breakfast before the second day, and Joey pulls out this Air Jordan box and opens it up, and it's these heads and some others too. It was basically the four of us. It was me, Andy Grove, Brad Korando, and Joey at breakfast. And so he let us go through these clubs and pick them out. And I'm really excited about the two that I picked up because they're both lofters that kind of fit some gaps of clubs that I'm building right now. So these are going to go in the beginner sets. And in fact, I might actually keep one of these clubs. This one in particular might slot into one of the gutty play sets that I'm building for myself. So thank you, Joey, for these two heads. Also really heavy. So everything that I love about a gutty head is in these two right here. So that was fun. As you might expect, there's a lot of driving from Long Island to, went from Long Island to Kansas City first to visit family. And that drive was about 2.5 days basically. So did a lot of stops at antique shops, and I saw a lot of clubs, and I'll show some pictures as I'm talking of some of the antique shops that I went into. There's no shortage of clubs out there right now. You know, I'm pretty particular at this point and don't need most of the clubs that I end up finding. Yeah, if you're having a hard time finding clubs, let me know, and I'll kind of give you some ideas as to where I was seeing plenty of clubs. You know, basically in Ohio, Indiana, a couple shops in Illinois, I saw some clubs. So yeah, they're out there, folks, and you just got to keep looking for them. The only club that I did end up buying was at an antique store in Illinois, and this was a Mashie Niblick that I thought was kind of interesting because it's got the hand of friendship right here, which is associated with George nickel clubs. But this is not a nickel club, as far as I can tell. It just seems like they probably, you know, kind of took the hand of friendship to give their particular club a little bit more, you know, credence or whatever. But regardless of that, it's got good playable weight to it, and I needed a Mashie Niblick like this with a nice, you know, it's not a flange sole, but it's a pretty wide sole for some beginner sets that I'm building, pre-35 beginner sets. So pick this one up. Basically, I'm backing up a little bit now. Right after the second day of festivities at the Oddball, which was an 18-hole Gutty event, I went to Brad Korando's workshop and had intended on building or moving on to the next step of the Tom Morris putter that I'm working on, which would have been the carving out the weight pocket and learning how to work with lead or bismuth tin. And I forgot the heads. The only thing I forgot on the whole trip, I brought everything else that I needed except for my box of heads that I was working on. So I was really disappointed about that. But I talked to Brad and he said, well, you know, we could actually build a shaft if you want, because I need to learn how to do that anyway. So that's what we did. And this is the shaft that we ended up building. This is going to be the putter shaft for my Tom Morris head. And really fun process. I videotaped that for myself, and what I'm going to do is learn how to do this on my own and then do a little bit more you know, multi-camera angle presentation of how to do this process, or at least how I've learned how to do this process sometime this year. I don't know exactly when that's going to be, but a lot of what I've been working on behind the scenes that I haven't been sharing with you on the channel lately is my you know, learning how to build replica long nose clubs, and basically learning Brad's method of doing that, which is kind of a combination of Elmer's all hand tool method and Brad's method, which includes a couple shortcuts using power tools, where it just makes the process a little bit quicker. So I'll show you all that in the future, but Brad makes his shafts by hand out of square billets of hickory, and actually is using hickory that he sourced from his home golf course. A hickory tree came down a couple years ago, and he was able to acquire enough wood to make several billets that he then seasoned in his basement for about a year. And now he's starting to use those billets to make shafts. And so this is one of those. It's hard to tell right now, but this basically starts out as kind of an octagon, and then you just make multi-facets all the way around until it becomes mostly round. But even when you spin it in your hands, you can feel most of the, you know, the facets. So I could spend more time on this and make it more, you know, round if I wanted. But there are plenty of old clubs when you pick up. If you twirl the shaft in your hand, you'll feel some of that facet or some of those facets that kind of demonstrate that it was a hand sawn or a handcrafted shaft, probably out of square. So very cool, and thanks Brad for doing the workshop session with me. Let's see what else I pick up. So we'll go right here to this. Andy Grow, who that's going to be my travel partner to Scotland in just a matter of about a week at this point when you're watching this, if you watch it when it first comes out. But when Andy went to Scotland the first time, one of the highlights of his trip was playing the original 12-hole routing at Prestwick, which was the site of the very first Open championship. And to commemorate that, which was, I think, just only a 2.5 week span last October, Prestwick actually had these Wicker flag toppers instead of flags. And so they were painted white. This one is the size of the one that would have been on the actual green, and then there was a smaller size that was on the practice green. So Andy loved these things so much when he was there, and they were just so iconic to see on the golf course that he inquired as to who made them. And they're handmade out of Wicker. And I found the maker, and basically had 2 small ones and 2 large ones made, and I bought one of the large ones. So I'll eventually put this on a flagstick, and it'll be in my own golf museum once I finish renovating that space down here in the basement. But I thought this was really cool. And yeah, you could do a lot of creative things with this. If you want to put a light bulb in there, you could turn it into a light, though there's not a lot of space in there to let the light out. But just a really cool piece of golf history, and I wish that I had been able to go on that trip to play Prestwick, play the original 12-hole routing, but this is the next best thing. So pick this up. I'm going to set this back here for a second, because I would say one of the best pickups that I got is actually this guy right here. This was in an antique store in Illinois, and it is basically a 27-hole club holder. You can't see the bottom of it because the camera angle's not quite there, but it's got notches in the base of this for all of these holes up here. So it's really sturdy. And my idea here is not only just to use this one for club display in my my golf museum space, but also to start making these and maybe refining them and tweaking them a little bit. Now that I'm starting to get a little bit more comfortable with tools, doing the 19th century long nose club replica making. So yeah, I thought this was a cool piece, and it's weird to say that a display piece like this is one of the highlight pickups of your trip, but I like having nice looking or at least really good functional display pieces to put clubs in. And I've kind of experimented with some of the fishing rod holders, and I've got some over here off camera that have broken. And so I figured that that wasn't the ideal way to display these clubs, and I think something like this is going to be better. So there's that. Let's see, what else do we have? I think that probably covers what I picked up over the last 2 weeks. I'll just kind of briefly tell you where else I played. So I was supposed to play the sand green. I don't know if I mentioned on the channel yet, but I was going to play with Chris Harriman, whom I played with a couple times on the channel. And we were going to play one of the old 9-hole sand green courses that are popular in Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. And this one is in Baldwin, Kansas. Unfortunately, plans fell through for that. Chris got sick the night before, and we couldn't do that. But I won't say much more about that, because that's going to happen at some point, that we're going to play that, and it'll be a course vlog. And I'll talk about that, you know, really interesting time of golf history during the Great Depression, where those golf courses were kind of the only way you could play golf in the Dust Bowl region of the Midwest. But anyway, that was going to be my first round that I was going to film. That didn't happen, so went to the Oddball. I'll have a course vlog from the 18 holes of Featherie golf that we played, and then the 18 holes of Gutty golf the next day at Fair Lakes Golf Club, which was in nearby Seaport, Illinois. So those two are coming up on the channel. I then went from Peoria up to Milwaukee and spent some time with my mom and friends, and also played Bonnybrook Golf Course in Waukegan, Illinois, which is a James Fowlis design from the early 1920s. And the interesting thing about that course, as far as it relates to me, is that I grew up in Waukegan and never played that course. So I had no idea what that course looked like until I played it last week. And you'll see that course vlog on the channel soon as well. And then the next day, played the course that this hat came from, which is Belmont Golf Club in Downers Grove, Illinois. And if you know anything about golf history in America, the name Belmont Golf Club might ring a bell, in that it was the golf course. Well, I'll back up a little bit. The site that Belmont Golf Course is on is the site of the first 18-hole golf course in America, and it was designed by C.B. McDonald. It was the original Chicago Golf Club. Started out as 9 holes, was stretched to 18 holes, And then they moved Chicago Golf Club from that original location to its current location. And the 18-hole course that remained was renamed Belmont Golf Club in, I think, 1899. So the golf there dates back to 1892. But Belmont Golf Club started in 1899. It was eventually trimmed down to 9 holes. And it's been a public golf course in Downers Grove, run by the Downers Grove Park District since the 1960s. Just recently, though, and anybody that was kind of aware of golf history knew about the history of that site and that golf course. But they've, over the last year, have completely rebranded the golf course and embraced the history that exists there. And in fact, I think it's holes number 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, 9 are still basically original layout from the original course. So you can still play holes that C.B. Macdonald designed on that site. They've changed obviously over the years a little bit, but the holes still play the same, from same tee to green essentially all these years. And I'll give you more information on that when you watch the course vlog for that one in the near future too. So yeah, basically, I'm going to have 4 course vlogs. Is that right? Yeah, 4 course vlogs from this trip to show you. They'll be coming up in the summer at some point. But the big thing that's happening this year is the trip to Scotland, which I'm super excited about right now. I've already, basically packed up my clubs and delivered them through DHL. They're on their way to England as we speak, actually on their way to Scotland. Next week, if you're watching this when this video comes out, I'll be doing a what's in the bag for Scotland that'll cover the clubs that I'm bringing as well as the clothes that I'm packing, just to kind of give you an idea of how I'm prepping for that trip, so you might be able to use some of that information for your own trip. But before we go, I just want to touch on a couple of the things that I picked up before my trip to the Midwest. It's been kind of dry here, and not just weather-wise, but also I haven't found many clubs this year. I keep checking Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, my usual places for clubs, and just hadn't seen much lately. But that changed a couple weeks ago, actually 3 weeks ago. My wife and I went to one of my favorite antique stores in Connecticut, which is Monger's Market. I think that's the name of it, Monger's Market in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And we were looking around for stuff, and I ended up coming across, I think 7 clubs. Let's see, six clubs, 4 of which I think are really cool. And the price for these clubs, I'll tell you, were $10 a piece. So I couldn't pass them up. I'll just kind of show you a couple of these right off as they're right behind me here. So this was one of the first clubs that I saw in the batch, and this is when I got excited about what I was finding. This is a Spalding, probably circa 1899, 1900 driving mashie. And the specs on this are great. 18 degrees, E3 swing weight, 40 1/4 inches play length, and the shaft is pretty straight. There's half of the original grip here. It's got a stamped Spalding shaft. Very cool Gutty club. I'm excited to try playing. So this was a great first club to see as I dug through the rest of them. So I'll just go over a couple of the other highlights here. This is let's see. This isn't a Gutty club. This is a dot face, kind of a muscle back mashie. But the cool thing about this club is that it's stamped Greenbrier, White Sulphur Springs, Virginia, which is a C.B. Macdonald design. PGA used to play there. There's an event there for many years. I don't think it's there anymore. But I thought that was cool. And so, when you come across clubs that have notable golf courses on there, those are collectible. And this one actually also happens to be playable. It's got a nice playable weight. I haven't checked the specs on it yet, but it's got a good feel in the hand. So I'm excited to throw that in a set for someone, or sell it to a collector of Greenbrier. The highlight of the batch, though, was this club right here. This is a small head niblick. This is probably from 1899, 1900, about the same time frame as the Spalding driving mashie. And it's hard to say who this club was made by, but it was sold by Schlesinger of New York. Slazenger of New York had clubs made for them by Robert Condy. There were a lot of makers that made clubs for Slazenger, so it's hard to say who exactly made this one. But this one is fantastic as far as Gutty clubs are concerned. It's hard to find small head niblicks. A lot of people end up calling this a rut niblick, but if you want to be technical, a rut niblick was an earlier club than this one. It would have been an even smaller head, and it would have really been only used to get a ball out of a rut. This is a kind of the next evolution of the rut niblick, and so we call these small head niblicks. And you could be a little bit more versatile, or this club was a little more versatile for you as a player. It's got a pretty wide sole on it. Not necessarily, you couldn't really open it up and try to flop a shot with this, but you'd have a little bit more control over the ball, and you could do a little bit more with it from a chipping perspective. But yeah, you don't come across these very often. This one is 46 degrees of loft, F2 swing weight, and original shaft, still straight. It's great. I'm really looking forward to getting this into a Gutty set. This will probably be in a set that I sell because I'm pretty well set on small head niblicks in my play sets. So stay tuned for this club. And if you're interested in this, let me know. Yeah, that was a cool find. And then some other random clubs that are just, good players, but nothing really notable to show you. I will show you this last club, though, before we go. My wife and I took a trip to the North Fork of Long Island, just for your geography. Long Island kind of has a North Fork and a South Fork, and most people are familiar with the South Fork because that's where the Hamptons are. But the North Fork is a quieter alternative to going to the South Fork, and my wife and I like going out there. It's only about 45 minutes to an hour drive from here, and we stopped in an antique shop, and I found this club, which is a pretty basic Wright and Ditson St. Andrews brassy, but it's got a lot of loft to it. It's actually 22 degrees of loft, which I haven't found many clubs like this. It's only B7 swing weight, but what I have found is that if a club is at least B7 or B8, then you can usually add weight under the sole plate and maybe extend it about a ½ inch and get it up to the swing weight that you want, which for me is low Ds. So this club will be a project, but once it's done, it's going to be a nice player. It's really well preserved in this area. This is often where you see a lot of little hairline cracks develop. And even though this club's dirty, it doesn't look like it was used very much because a lot of the stress points that you find in a brassy are still really well intact and clean on this club. So that'll be a project for me sometime this summer. And I think that pretty much covers what I've been up to the last few weeks. But again, if you're watching this is relatively close to when I publish it, the big news on this channel is going to be Scotland, and really excited to bring you the content that Andy Groh and I are planning on bringing you from Scotland. That includes course vlogs. It includes interviews in between courses where we, just kind of talk about where we just played and our initial thoughts. There's just going to be a lot of content. We're basically going to, try to document every aspect of this upcoming week. So a lot of that will be on the free side, but a lot of it's going to be on the members side too. So if you're not a Patreon hacker backer or YouTube hacker backer, details to do that are in the description so you don't miss any of the extra content. Just a quick note too about the extra content. If you already are a channel member, either through YouTube or through Patreon, and this is specifically for the Patreon hacker backers, make sure you check the Patreon page on a regular basis, because I'll try to do posts each time to let you know of a new piece of extra content or members only content. But I've also pinned a playlist on the top of my Patreon page that will have everything in it that I've published so far for members only. So if you don't see an email in a little while, or if you miss it in your inbox, if you go to the Patreon page, you'll see that pinned playlist, and it'll have everything that I've posted so far in chronological order in that playlist. YouTube, I think it's easier if you're a YouTube member to see what I've been posting as a member, but you know, if you ever wonder if you're missing anything, just reach out to me and I'll let you know if there's a way that I can kind of let you know better, because I'm still learning how to do all the communication on my end to let you know that there's new content. And the reason I'm saying all of this right now is because I've seen a couple videos that I've posted on the member side that it doesn't look like they're getting many views, and maybe they're just terrible videos, but I think it's more likely that people just don't know that they're there right now. So yeah, if you have any questions about that, feel free to reach out. And I think that'll do it. But stay tuned this upcoming week. The video is going to be what's in the bag for Scotland, where I show you the clubs that I'm taking, that I've already actually packed up and that are on their way to Scotland. And I'm also going to show you the clothes that I'm going to wear, because I put a lot of thought into that, not just to try to look the part, but also to be comfortable in what will probably be rainy weather every day, because it's Scotland. So stay tuned for tips on that. And I think that'll do it this week, folks. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time. Take care.